And the land acknowledgement is, as a descendant of stolen people, I acknowledge that I live and work on stolen land, land upon which Seattle's first people persist to this day. Good evening, I'm Yvette Moy, and I am the Director of Public Lectures for the University of Washington, and we are housed in the graduate school, and I want to thank you all for coming and out tonight. We have a couple housekeeping items to go through. One is get to know your neighbor, because it's really small tonight. So we're just really glad to see you. We also ask that you please refrain from taking photographs or audio recording our speaker. And we are recording this lecture. This is the final one of our critical race theory trilogy. We will release the entire trilogy online via our MUTA Public Lectures YouTube channel. So we're gonna release that, I don't know, soon. But so what we would ask you to do is please check our social media for the date that it goes out, and that's, you won't miss it. We also will be releasing our spring season lineup on March 16th, and it's really good. We'll be back on campus for those two events, and so we hope that you'll join us. I'd also like to thank this evening our intern, Vanessa Chian Lai. This was her last day of classes, so she's pretty excited about finishing up. So we're really glad that she stuck it out with us this evening. And then I'd like to give a biographical sketch of our speaker tonight, Edwin Lindo. Associate Teaching Professor Edwin Lindo has embarked on the journey to ask and explore the hard questions of race and racism within the institutions of medicine and law. Edwin brings the interdisciplinary study of critical race theory, Latino critical legal theory, or Lat Crit, for those who are in the know, we had to look that up, Edwin, and others to medicine and law so we can better learn how racism detrimentally affects our health, our learning, our teaching, and justice. As a faculty in the Department of Family Medicine and affiliate faculty in the Department of Bioethics and Humanities, Edwin has developed curriculum and teaches critical race theory and medicine, and provides student and faculty development around the issues of race and equity in medical education and patient care. Professor Lindo is also the Assistant Dean for Social and Health Justice within the Office of Healthcare Equity, also at the University of Washington School of Medicine. His research and scholarship has focused on the history of racialized medicine, race and racism within medicine, social justice, social movements, and decolonized pedagogies for critical education. Edwin is also the creator and host of the Praxis podcast. It's a podcast focused on addressing racism within medicine in all its forms. And lastly, he's an internationally recognized speaker and thinker on these critical issues. Estelle, who's with us this evening, his partner and wife, as well as Edwin, founded and curated Estelita's Library, a social justice community library and bookstore dedicated to the goal of bringing truth and justice to communities through decentralized knowledge and decolonized spaces. Their books cover the topics of justice, liberation, identity, race and racism, economic and political theory, and anything else that guides them in understanding the world through a critical lens. You can find them online at the estelitaslibrary.com. Estelita's Library, for you guys should know, is named after their little girl, Estela, who's also here tonight. I know, she's pretty awesome. And I think her little brother, Sandino, might need something named after him as well, so you might need to get on that. And then finally, Edwin is the co-founder of North Star Cycling, the largest BIPOC cycling club on the West Coast. Its goal is to bring melanated people and justice to cycling. Please welcome Edwin Lindo.
Thank you. That's awesome. All right. Oh, mic's good. Oh, little high. We good there? Yeah. So we do have an intimate crew, and there's a lot of lights. So I'm going to ask that we try to not necessarily have it like a class, but these are the moments that I think we actually get to explore the possibilities of thinking through these really difficult issues. Because when you have a big audience, someone comes up, they're prepared, they have their speech, they have their lecture, they have the presentation, and they're not actually pushing the limit of the possibilities of these ideas that we're going to be talking about. And we're talking about, at least the title, is the resiliency of critical race theory. There's probably some folks that say, what is critical race theory? I've gotten that question a lot from the newspaper, other media, to friends and colleagues, but also the question of what racism is, because critical race theory is that. It situates itself in the place of examining, exploring, and interrogating racism. So what we're going to cover is a brief foundation. Angelica, a colleague and friend, I think covered it well in her foundational section if you were here. But I'll touch on what it is, because there's a lot of confusion. You probably see it in the news, right? Critical race theory, it needs to disappear. Don't teach it in school, don't teach it in class, don't teach my children. And it's funny because I sit there and laugh and I say, I don't think these people know what they're talking about. They don't know what they're actually eliminating, or realizing that they're not eliminating anything because it's not existing in the schools that they're talking about. That's one. So we'll talk about the foundation. The next part is, now we're pushing the limits of these ideas, right? We're going to talk about what I call, what is the tax of racism, or the racism tax. I'll explain more what that means, but I want us to sit with that thought, the racism tax, and why are people willing to pay it? The next part is the setup of racism. Racism is a setup. It is set up to win and privilege and advantage a certain few, a certain group of folks. Knowing the setup, and this is why critical race theory is so important, it gives us the language to be able to see what's happening, call out what it is, use the language to articulate and say, am I the only one here seeing this? Because what's really happening here is racism. This is how it's manifesting, and we need to do something about it. But racism does an exceptional job of gaslighting, and we'll explain how it does that. So the history. There isn't one linear history that you can look at, open a textbook, and say, oh, this is how critical race theory was founded. Critical race theory was a formulation of folks, really activists within the legal academy during the late 70s, early 80s that said, what is going on? We're seeing folks getting locked up. We're seeing the criminal justice system harming black and brown communities. We're seeing an overwhelming amount of black folks getting charged for crack cocaine, but white folks who use drugs at the same rate are not. And when they do, the sentencing is 10 times less compared to black folks who were found using crack cocaine. Why is that? Well, critical race theory started exploring. Well, it's racism, but that's a simple answer. That's an easy answer. The question is, how does racism work? How does it linger, express itself, and then say, look, this is how it's going to play out, and we're going to allow the folks who it's benefiting the tools to be able to play the game of saying, this is not racism. You're just not working hard enough. You don't have the resources. But don't blame us for that, and we'll talk more about that. You need to blame yourself for that. But it was a formulation of activist scholars, that I'll call them, an amazing group of folks who said, we need to talk about how racism is working in the legal system. And if we don't, then we're being poor legal scholars. We're missing an entire component of what is the legal academy and what is the legal system. Because if you're going to tell me that it is race neutral, that it is fair, that can't be true. At least this is what they were saying. So what did they do? They wrote pieces, amazing law-reviewed journal pieces that anyone, and cited, peer-reviewed, and they would turn them into, for those who may not be familiar, they'll turn them into a law review, which is a journal for a law school. And this is how you get your progression through the academic ladder, is you get published. You get published through the law review journal if you're a legal scholar or a legal professor. But if you don't get published, you are not getting that promotion. And you get stuck on this one track. Well, guess what was happening? They would submit these publications and say, we'd like for you to publish this in your law review journal. Ran by primarily white folks, white law students, who said, this isn't scholarship. You're talking about racism? You can't talk about racism. It's not rigorous. How do you cite it? What studies are you talking about? This is not academic enough. You need to talk about the law. You can't talk about racism. And so they couldn't publish. They couldn't get the progress they needed to be able to overcome these barriers of saying, I'll become an associate professor, a full professor. So part of the advocacy said, you know what? Well, then we're not going to use the law review journals, and we'll publish them ourselves. And they started writing. You had Professor Derek Bell, who wrote an incredibly provocative piece. And his piece was critiquing Brown v. Board of Education. Many of us are familiar with it. Everyone hails it as the landmark case of integrating schools. Is that right? Yeah. I mean, in our history books, it is the case that they say, we overcame racism. Look at the little young black girl walking into this all-white school. But Professor Derek Bell asked some really simple questions. He said, what was the goal of this case? What was the goal of the case? So I'm now asking, I'm going to ask the audience, what was the goal of Brown v. Board of Education? Go ahead. You can shout it out loud. Desegregate. Great. What underlying assumptions are made with the thought of desegregating schools? In that time, what was the underlying assumption? If we desegregate, what should happen? Equality. Everything's solved. Maybe even the assumption that black students are going to get the same education as white students. But that was never part of the legal argument. Never once was it argued that black students should receive the same equitable education. There wasn't even an educational scholar that said, once you do this, they will receive the same education, they'll progress the same academically. No, that wasn't even part of the case. It was to integrate schools. Now, the next question he asked was, to integrate what schools? What schools were being integrated? The white schools. So the white schools were being integrated. How does funding work in this country? Tax base. Tell me more.
Just richer districts have more tax base.
Right. And for the teachers in the school, how does the school get money? By the number of butts that are sitting in those chairs. Interesting. So by integrating schools, when you had an entire community who was vehemently against it, finally changed course. And this is what Professor Bell said. Why did they change course? It's what he called, so now we're going to talk about the tenets. I'm giving you the history of critical race theory through the examples of how it works in critiquing our institutions and our systems. And what he called was looking at power systems and saying, why did they change? And he called it interest convergence dilemma. The interest, he believed, had to converge for white folks to believe that they were going to benefit from it, to be able to progress what would be considered a civil rights agenda. So they integrated the schools, but the benefit was to who? Was to the white schools. Why didn't someone advocate to integrate the black schools? Probably because they said that's too much of a political uphill that we're never going to win. But we believe we can integrate white schools. But again, the districts, the superintendent said, at some point, decided to shift knowing that the wave was strong enough to shift. And they said, actually, it's not a bad idea. We're going to get more money. And nowhere in Brown v. Board of Education does it require that black students receive the same education. How do we know that? You look at 2022 at Garfield High School in Seattle, Washington. I had young kids who I know who went there, and they called it the slave ship. Why? Because white students are on the second floor taking AB courses, and black students are on the first floor taking remedial courses. You have high schoolers calling it the slave ship in 2022. Why? Because Brown v. Board of Education never actually required an equitable education. It just required an integrated one. We don't get to that analysis without critical race theory. Now, many people have come after me and said, Edwin, how dare you and Professor Bell and many folks who believe that line of analysis, those are the civil rights that were won and fought by the sweat and tears of people who put their life on the line. Absolutely, I'm not saying it wasn't. They integrated schools. But let's not call it what it wasn't. It was not an agenda, or it wasn't a case that was meant to provide equitable education. Because after Brown v. Board of Education, if you look at the data, the education diverged drastically. The next point of Brown v. Board: what happened to all those black teachers? We don't even talk about them. An entire generation of scholars, of teachers that took the time out of their lives to want to teach these young black kids and say, I know they're going to make it, lost a career. Thousands of them, if not hundreds of thousands. Do you think they were going to get a job in the all-white school? Absolutely not. But again, it's not a critique because we say, oh, nothing is good enough. Critical race theory provides a critique to say it could be better. And when we analyze it could be better, then we don't settle on our laurels and say, oh, we've made it. We now say, something's off here. Interest convergence tells us that's one of the theoretical tenets of critical race theory. And you have others. So let me explain the others. The other is that race is a social construct. I add to it, and many other scholars add, that it's a social political construct. You probably have heard that in the news, and people talk about it, but what does that mean? It's a social construct. It means that it was created by man. And it changes depending on where you go. I just came back with our family from 2 months in Nicaragua, in Central America. Do you think they talk about race the way we talk about race here? Or understand race the same way? No, they don't. They thought my wife was from Nicaragua. I'm not saying there isn't colorism and racism in Nicaragua. That's another conversation. It exists. But I'm saying here, we talk about race in ways that were so embedded for the manifestation of creating a racial hierarchy from the tunes of 1767 with Blumenbach, with other white scientists that said, we're going to take the science and prove to the world that people are biologically different because of the colors of their skin. And then if anyone took a chance, they could have stepped back and said, for what? And he probably didn't have a good answer, but as we look back and analyze it, you say, it was because he was at the apex of that hierarchy. There was a vested interest to name the racial categories to his benefit. And in those categories, he would talk about things that black people are lazy, that native people only want to go to war, that Asian people were only good for working. But what did it say about white people? That they're thoughtful, that they're hardworking, that they wear clothes and are governed by laws. That's not an accident. That's intentional. And there's other tenets in critical race theory that I teach in my course, and you can dig into it, but I want to show that critical race theory is a lens that we can use to look at systems, policies, organizations, and even the mechanisms of groups, and say, how is racism manifesting itself in this space? And it doesn't operate alone. It operates with the tools and the ancillary elements of understanding movements and social movements, understanding power and how it works for its benefit, and also understanding why people are doing the things they do as it pertains to the racial categories that exist in this world. There's many people who say, well then Edwin, let's just get rid of race. I didn't say that. That's not what I was saying. There are differences. There are cultural differences that come from people of different parts of the world. We've chosen here in this country to use race as a proxy to explain the cultural differences. What white folks had done in the past was to use race not to describe cultural differences, but to try to describe biological differences for the purposes of pinning a group as racially inferior, as intellectually inferior, as biologically inferior. Why was that necessary? Well, because you can't put a group of people in chains if you don't make the argument that they are less than human. And that's exactly what happened during the early 1600s leading up into the early 1700s. So what is critical race theory? If we put it in a nutshell, it is a group of tenets, of really lenses through which we can look at the world. Race is a social political construct. Interest convergence dilemma that white folks in this country, and let me clarify, when I say white folks, there's some people who say, Edwin, it's unfair that you're talking about white folks. If I said brown folks, you would be offended. I'm talking about the construct of whiteness, the apparatus that is whiteness. And folks get to choose how far in that they want to play. Do you want to be consumed by it and take it all and say, well, I will take all the benefits of whiteness? Because some people do choose that. Or they say, you know what, I'm not actually excited or want to be a part of that. But you have to diligently push it away. And how does that manifest? Well, I use an example of the moving sidewalk at the airport. If you're standing on the moving sidewalk and you put your hands up and say, I'm not doing anything, Edwin, the moving sidewalk will get you across to the other gate. It's going to take you turning around and stepping off of the sidewalk. And your colleagues, your other white colleagues, are going to look at you and say, are you silly? You're messing it up. We're all supposed to get on this sidewalk because it benefits us all. But if one steps off, you now start to question, well, why are all those other folks who are darker walking? Why do they have to walk to their gate? So the other component of critical race theory, and there's a number, and they fluctuate. I'd say there's probably between 7 and 9 tenets. The main ones I've described to you. The other one that I'll share is that racism is perpetual. Now, I say that statement, and people say, Edwin, why are you so nihilistic? Why would you live in a world constantly believing that racism is just on top of you? Well, let me explain. We were just in Nicaragua for 2 months. And I didn't talk to a white person for 2 months. I didn't know what that felt like. There are white people in this country today who have never talked to people who don't look like them. And that's the regular. I'm not saying that's the goal. What I'm saying is that when you are all consumed in it, you don't realize what's actually happening. And the analogy that I give is the analogy of the fish in water. And you have 2 fish swimming in a pond, and they run into an older fish. And the older fish says, hey, youngsters, how's it going? And they're like, it's great. And then he said, how's the water? And they're like, water? What's water? That's racism. Is that we are in it so deep that we don't even know that we're walking through it, that we're living in it. Especially folks who carry the identity of whiteness, because it's to the benefit. And so I want to be clear again. I don't want it to be, it's not an attack. It's actually my goal to build solidarity, that we can actually dismantle what is this construct of whiteness. I say that because critical race theory has allowed me to dig in and ask some really probing questions, because I asked a lot of my white colleagues, well, where are you from? And they're like, oh, well, I'm from Kenmore. I'm like, no, like, where's your family from? Well, they came from Texas. Right, but Texas is part of Mexico, so you're Mexican? No. I mean, they came from Europe. Okay, what part of Europe? I don't know, I'm a mutt. So what racism has done, and when I say racism, I mean the choice of saying, do I become part of the apparatus that is oppressive, or do I have to live on the side of this fence that is getting oppressed? And that was a choice that was made. We know it was made because in the 1930s, there was the rolls in the prisons in New York City. And in the early 1930s, late 20s, before the Depression, they used to write I for Italian. They used to write R for Russian. They used to write G for German. They used to write J for Jewish. After the Depression, or in the midst of it, all that turned into W. Because it was now a fight to figure out, are you white or are you not? Because if you're not working. And you're going to be treated like them. And if you're given the choice, I understand why the choice is made. You would choose white. Because the privilege, the benefit that's going to come with saying, look, I don't want to be treated like that. I'm going to stand here. But what do you give up? What was traded for whiteness? Culture was traded for whiteness. How do I know that? Well, if you've called yourself a mutt, it means your culture was stolen from you. And you can't actually identify with the indigeneity of the people that you come from. That hurts. I know because my native language was stolen. Spanish is not a native language. I don't know the native language. It doesn't exist anymore. And it hurts me because I can't communicate in the way that the people who run through my veins used to communicate, or what they used to eat, or how they used to care for each other. There's elements of it going back to Nicaragua and seeing the people who I come from, absolutely. But we've also been robbed of that benefit. And you can't get it back unless you do the work to try to figure out where that connection is. Why is that important? There's a saying in Spanish culture, Latin America, that says cultura cura, that culture heals. How do we know that's true? Because there's studies that tell us that if you don't have a community around you, you are going to live a shorter life. If you don't have aunties and uncles and grandmas that are helping you when you're giving birth and telling you what to eat to take care of the child, that child's not going to live, or at least is not going to live as long as they possibly could. Again, back in Nicaragua, every morning, folks would say hi to us, who we just met, who we owe nothing to and they owe nothing to us. Our neighbors here didn't even know we were gone. That's not culture. And why is that important? And this is the work that I do. I bring the praxis. Praxis means that you have both the theory and the practice of the work, and they're combined. Because I believe, like Paulo Freire has told us, that if you just have the theory, you're just a thinker. And if you just are on the streets as an activist, you're just acting. Your movement on the streets has to inform your theory, and your theory has to inform your movements on the streets. But if we don't carry that praxis, then we may be missing a component. And I think that's true in the understanding of culture, and that's what I try to bring to critical race theory. Not many folks will talk about culture because they would say, oh, it's just a legal analysis of the laws. And I actually think it's so much deeper than that. So let's talk about the next component. And throughout this, if you have any questions, please just shout it out, raise your hand. I have colleagues here. If you want to say anything, please raise your hand and share. The next part is, I said, the tax of racism. So the tax, or the racism tax. And how does CRT play a role in that? Well, using the lens of CRT and understanding how it manifests, how racism works, I asked the question, why racism? If the goal was to gain power, why racism? It could have been a whole lot of other things. But it was racism that folks put all their money in. And granted, I'm not dismissing sexism, homophobia, cissexism. Those are real things. I'm knowing how vast racism was when the Portuguese came to West Africa in the 1500s. That's the bet they made, was this is how we're going to win power, by calling them black. It was the Portuguese that used that word first. They said negro. Why did they do that? Because white didn't exist. White wasn't a word to describe people. Black was the word first used, and then white folks had to say, well, shoot, if they're black, then what are we? And so really, in many ways, the identity of whiteness only exists in comparison to the identity of black folks. And that runs deep, at least to understand how and what that means. But the tax of racism is you have folks that say, no, we're not racist at all, but you've never hired a black person. Well, it's open to everyone. They just don't have what it takes. It's not a culture fit. They're not qualified. And I've heard a number of these excuses. But you even have a Nobel Prize winning economist by the name of Milton Friedman from the University of Chicago, who made the argument both about feminists and about black folks. His argument was, well, in a free market, which everyone should want to live in, the benefit that women and racial minorities have is that they can charge less for the same labor, and therefore, in a laissez-faire free market, they will get chosen for the job, and if they get in the job, they can get promoted because the other person wasn't chosen. And what's funny is, people believe it. But through critical race theory, you actually just see right through it. And that's why the title is called The Resiliency of CRT, Living Through Truth, is that we're, as a CRT scholar and folks who follow it, I understand why folks don't want to know the truth of this country, because it is devastating. It will weigh on you, particularly on black folks, on brown folks, indigenous folks, and say, I don't know if I want to get up tomorrow, because I know what this place did to my ancestors, and I know what they did to my aunties and my uncles. But I still have to. Instead of weighing that, you get distracted and say, well, let me watch this really nice and cute movie, or let me go to the movies with my friends, or let me stay on my phone and get distracted by social media so that I don't have to bear that brunt. I get why, because this place is heavy. This place will kill you. It's proven to kill you just by existing here. So back to Milton Friedman, he makes that argument. I remember watching this on I forgot where I saw it, and everyone was like, yeah, that's a good argument. How do you argue with that? Free market, you should get the job, you'll get promoted. There's no racism in a free market. That's what he said. He said, there is no racism in the free markets because money doesn't care about color except green. And I remember telling my friend who was an economist, he said, Edwin, you can't debate it. And I said, well, let me put it this way. What if he actually didn't account for the fact that racist people are willing to pay to keep black folks out? They're willing to pay more to keep black folks out. They're willing to pay more to keep women out because they don't want them there. Does it cost them more? Absolutely, but they'll pay that tax. How do we know that's real? Because you look at the Fortune 500 companies throughout history. You look at who the CEOs were. You look who is in leadership. You look at who becomes president. The folks are willing to pay that tax. How else do we know that it exists? We look at communities and the redlining that exists. We had redlining in Seattle until the mid-1970s. The red line was Madison Avenue. You could not live north of Madison Avenue because in the grand deed it said, this home shall not be sold to anyone, and excuse my language, who is a Mongol, a Jew, or black. It was written in typewriter. It was not coming off that paper. But what does that mean? What did that do? It meant that folks were willing to have a more expensive neighborhood and pay more to not live with certain people. So capitalism doesn't eradicate racism. It just gives it a veil to be able to hide behind and say, but it's race neutral. How does money choose the color? No, it doesn't. And this now gets to the second part of this idea of a race-neutral society or race-neutral laws, where we say, and it's a good argument. I've heard a lot of people say to me, but Edwin, can you point out a law that is racist today, that says that black people can't do something? Because if you can't, then I don't believe in critical race theory. And many people get stumped and they're like, well, you're right. There isn't any law that explicitly prohibits or prevents or dismisses black or brown people. I said, but in 2022, you don't have to anymore. What we've done in this society is we've created policies that are, quote unquote, race neutral. And then on the back end, we allocate resources to the group we want to win. So if we're saying, no, this is a public school open to everyone. Well, why is it 95% white? Oh, sorry, we're just in the richest neighborhood of Seattle. That's not an accident. You just said, we're going to make it open to everyone, but we're just going to make sure that everyone looks like us. Or we look at jobs and say, this job is open to everyone. We encourage everyone to apply. Again, why is it 97% white? We just don't find a good fit, Edwin. They're not qualified. And I said, okay, so you are a tech company. And I've had this conversation. You are a tech company. Did you go to any neighborhoods that were predominantly black? No. Did you go to any HBCUs? Absolutely not. Oh, so you were intentionally looking for white folks. No, we never said we only wanted white. You don't have to say it. We are now in a place where the policies are race neutral, but the investments are race conscious, and they are primarily for white folks. That's how you get around the legality of it.
Can you say that again?
Yeah. So we are now in a situation where policies are race neutral, but the investments are race conscious for white folks. And that changes the conditions. It makes it fair on the face, but excruciatingly hard for us because now we get gaslit. Now, our whole lives I get told, Edwin, if you just pull yourself up by your bootstraps, you're going to make it. You just need to work harder than anyone else. This is now the tax that black and brown and indigenous people have to carry. I'll take the example going back to redlining. There was a great peer-reviewed scientific piece that came out yesterday, and one of the co-authors is from UW, and it was a piece that proved that redlining in the 70s has made sure that those neighborhoods have the highest contaminants of air pollution. My response, excuse my language, no shit. My colleague here, I've been saying this for years. But when I say it, it was, but Edwin, where is the proof? I did have to extrapolate from a number of different studies that were done, but we've lived through it. The experience is there. So why do I bring it up? Because the policies of the 1940s and 50s that relegated folks into pockets of poverty in South Seattle, which meant you couldn't go work in North Seattle to make more money. You had to find low-paying jobs in these neighborhoods. Also meant that the housing market was going to be much lower, so your ability to build wealth was almost nil. And it was where freeways, truck stops, light rail stations, I'll talk about the light rail station, were built in ways that were not for the purposes of those communities. Let's talk about the light rail station. I'm giving examples in ways that critical race theory works, and I don't want to just explain what it is. I want to show you what it is. The example I give is, where in Seattle is the light rail only at surface level? South Seattle. Southeast Seattle, yep. Can you think of anywhere else? Nowhere. You go from, I forgot what that stop is, right before Columbia City. Mount Baker. You go from Mount Baker to, you go to Othello, Rainier Beach, and then it starts going up towards Angle Lake. So from Rainier Beach to Mount Baker, you have a surface level train station. Do you know how many accidents happen there? People getting hit by light rail. There's not even like an arm that goes down when there's a red light that says, don't cross the street. And I live right up the block from it. That's not an accident. What was happening at that time? They say, oh, we ran out of money, but we can still build the light rail. It's just going to be at surface level. Are they going to build at surface level in Redmond? Absolutely not. In Bellevue? Nope. Why? Because the communities there said, you are damn sure not going to be putting this. This is dangerous. So it's too dangerous for one community, but not too dangerous for another. Why is that? Well, we know why. Because one is darker than the other. One is viewed as less than the other, and that they should be grateful that there's a light rail station there in the first place.
Or talk about the eminent domain that got the light rail built in South Seattle.
Yeah, or the eminent domain, as my wife is mentioning, of how land was just taken in swaths to say we need to build this light rail station. Wealth stolen. Sure, they got paid for it, but you didn't get the choice. You said you got to go. And these were black families. The gentrification that's hitting. So if you notice, CRT can understand just about any situation. I'm not saying it's the answer. I'm saying it gives us the tools to ask better questions to get to the answer. And so you go to South Seattle and we talk about the poor investment in these communities from the study that said they have higher rates of contaminants, of air pollution. And what I found is another study that says that these neighborhoods have the highest rates of respiratory disease. The highest rates of asthma are in White Center, are in Rainier Beach, are in Columbia City, are in South Center. Not an accident. What are in those locations? The truck stops that existed for these freeways. The train station, the cargo trains, and the massive big rigs that go through there. So now let's connect the dots, and my colleague has heard this already. But you had policies from 1950 with folks who probably still are walking around today that said, no, you can't sell those homes to people who don't look like us. Fast forward to 2019, 2020, we hit a pandemic. And what did the pandemic tell us? If you walk into a hospital, especially during a time of scarcity in the ventilators that we had in the hospital, and you had a pre-existing condition like asthma, you were not going to get a ventilator. Redlining, poor communities, trucks, freeways, train stations, get sick, go to the hospital, you're going to die. That's how racism works. But without the knowledge of connecting the dots, we just think it's an accident. We think it happens by chance. Oh, you're just so unlucky that you live in that neighborhood. I'm not unlucky. I just happen to be someone who that person in 1950 who didn't even know me decided they wanted to kill me before they met me. When we understand that none of this is an accident, that we live in a place that racism is perpetual, yet at the same time it is so unreal, it's not real at all, but it's so deadly because the consequences of racism will kill us, we have to take it serious. We have to be willing to be a traitor to those advantages, to those privileges, to those benefits, because we have to understand that when we step into that house or that square that says, no, just come. Just come into whiteness. It's going to benefit you. That it actually is a detriment not only to the communities that you care about, but to yourself because it has stolen your culture, identity, and it is going to steal the communities that we live in and that we deserve. And so at the end of it, I say at the end that we are surviving through truth. Yes, it's hard, it's devastating, and it's heavy. But why would I ever want to live in a world where I am lying to myself that this place is exactly what it's not? And I'd rather know how ugly it is and live through it than lie to myself that somehow it isn't this. So I think that is my time. I'm so glad to be here with y'all, and I'm happy to take any questions. And don't be shy. Please, it could be if it's a thought in your mind, or something you felt, or said, I really don't understand this, or I want to push you because I think about it differently, I am happy to hear it.
Are there societies that have proven to be either anti-racist or non-racist? Is it inherently human?
Yeah, it's a good question. So what I hear a lot is, Edwin, you're too young to understand that we're just naturally tribal. It's tribalism. And I'm like, yeah, that makes sense, except race is not a tribe. It was made up. Tribalism, in my mind, is something that is inherently part of your genetic makeup. This is who we are from this place. The diaspora of whiteness, the diaspora of blackness, the diaspora of every other race, it's so vast that you can't actually pigeonhole people and say, you're this. But that's also the beauty of it. Right? The beauty of it is that it is, and I don't want to use the cliche of diverse, but it is so different that you can't say, oh, this is what you look like, or this is how you must behave. But racism requires that. It requires it to fall into those buckets, or else it can't operate. Right? If it's not clear cut, then it can't operate. If you're not white and you're not black, well then, how much can I hate you? Or how do I treat you? And racism decides, well, okay, let's name it this way. If you're not one of us, then you're the other. And so that's where it started to go, is we'll name them the other so that they're no longer us. And how do we know that was the case? Again, it was either you were white or you were not. Those were the laws, and really during the time of slavery and during the time of post-slavery, late 1800s, you had the census that just started making up categories to try to establish who wasn't white. Why did they want to do that? Because they were scared that there were black people sneaking into white venues who were really black, and that couldn't possibly be something they could allow. I then go back to ask the fundamental questions. Why did white folks, and why do white folks just struggle so hard with engaging, living, and understanding people who aren't like them? And some people say, Edwin, that's a blanket statement. You can't. But I'm just looking at history. It's like, why is that struggle existing? And I haven't come to the right answer. There's hypotheses. Some are familiar with the Moors. The Moors conquered Europe from 400 AD to 770 AD. Some argue maybe it's they didn't like that they were conquered, and that the Moors brought, and these were all black folks who brought education, universities, libraries, health, and they didn't like the fact that they were conquered by people who looked like the Moors. That's one hypothesis. But I actually still don't understand why that hatred exists, even at the expense of their own humanity and economic interest and political interest. You had James Baldwin that said, white folks would rather be poor than black. Sometimes you say, I don't know how to help that. I can't help you. But there's something inside, and it's conditioning over generations, and that means then, because I do believe it is learned, that we have to figure out how to unlearn generationally. But I think that takes some time.
Yeah, I mean, from musical theater, the term that racism is carefully taught, right? It's a frightening reality in that kind of generational teaching in that way.
Yeah.
When you talk about the horror for a person of color to come to reality with what this country is, I would also say that I've experienced that from a very privileged place, but that same horror of, really, is that what we stand for?
Yeah. You had your hand up.
Thank you again,
Yes.
Dr. Lindo, for the presentation. So, the scholar, Resma, can't remember the last name,
Mm-hmm.
my grandmother Pam.
Yes.
So he speaks about intergenerational trauma. But the way he describes it is that he went intergenerational trauma from slavery that is carried on over multiple generations. But the way he speaks about it is that the impact is not just on blacks, it is on whites as well.
Correct.
And that is true. I think that think about the history and what was done to us as a race, and to carry that burden. It's the same for whites.
Right.
To carry the burden of really recognizing that history and their impact on that, on a people, on a community,
Right.
and to see that community decimated based on the action of your forefathers. I say that because I think that's why it's so difficult for both groups to have that conversation, because the realization is just so traumatic. How do you get over that? An author, I can't remember her name, her last name is Guy. She speaks about the fact that, when we experience a trauma, we can go through therapy to deal with it right away. But when you come on the slave ship, when you are raped, when your children are sold, at what point are you dealing with that trauma and
Right.
it continues? Similarly for whites, when you have an image, and they show this all the time, of a black person being lynched, and the group watching, and there's a young white girl who's smiling,
Right.
and someone not being able to say that this is not right, and to carry that through, what is the trauma for that group as well? And so I think both groups, they're experiencing trauma. They're experiencing it subconsciously, but if they were to consciously
Right.
face what has happened,
Yeah.
what brought us to that point, it is highly traumatic for everyone.
Yeah.
And how do you overcome that? How do you overcome your forefathers doing this and acknowledging that? It's hard.
Yeah.
Everybody's human.
Yeah.
It's not going to be easy. And how is it for the person who was the victim of that
Right.
to overcome that? This was your history. Yet, as you say, this continues to be taught in schools for black kids to say, this is all that you have for your
Right.
So it's
That's so
hard
deep.
because for African Americans, they continue to be re-traumatized.
Mm.
But until everybody faced that history, only one group is going to continue to
Right.
be traumatized.
Right.
And that is the challenge. Until we have those conversations, we have to go through the trauma, be uncomfortable, and then hopefully come out of it.
Right. No, I think you hit it. Thank you so much. I think you hit it on the head in that Paulo Freire, who is an education philosopher from Brazil, who was exiled because of his writings for being too radical, in his book, The Pedagogy of the Oppressed, he says that the oppressor has to understand, it's not until they get to the point of understanding that it is only the oppressed who can set both of themselves free. Because the oppressor cannot set themselves free. Why? Because in taking the authority of being the oppressor, you have lost your humanity. You can't gain it back. Only when, and that's why he says that the struggle must take place, only when the oppressed says, I'm not going to let you be that anymore. You don't own me anymore, that the oppressor now becomes free. And it is that dialectical, relational thing that it is reliant on each other. But until you get to that point, and that's why I've met white folks that understand it, that say, I'm here, but I'm not speaking. I'm here to be in solidarity for the freedom of black folks because I know that my freedom is inextricably bound to it. When you get to that point, it's no longer saying, oh, this is the black struggle thing happening over here. I support it. I put my sign up, but I don't let black folks in my house if they knocked on my door. Because that's the question I asked of Seattle. Now we're getting personal. We're going to tell the stories. My wife and I walk down the street, and there's a sign, and I'm like, so does that mean that we get to knock on the door? It says, we want to chill out on your couch. Is that what that sign means? Because I'm not exactly sure what it means. Because that same person who has the sign there is also willing to call the cops on us. Right? So it has to get to the point of, and I use the word solidarity because I don't like to use the word, what folks now use is, it's slipping my mind. I'm thinking in Spanish now. Where you stand up for someone else. Thank you. That with the word of ally and we hear it a lot. And I've been educated by the Black Panther Party. I grew up in the Bay Area, and I had the grace and the privilege of being around many of these older folks that organized with the party. And it was Elaine Brown who told me, Edwin, I don't need folks' allyship. Allyship is a geopolitical treaty that folks sign that say, when you go to war, I have to go to war. You feel obligated to do that, but you don't actually want to do that. But solidarity, which many countries in the global south have, say, if you're going to war, I'm stepping up because our freedoms are inextricably bound to each other. I didn't need to sign a treaty. I am bound to you, and we are going to fight together. You tell me how we move.
That's what I was going to say. We are inextricably linked.
Right.
We truly are. But it's really hard to recognize that because the pain that comes along with that, as you said, it is enormous. So we have to disaggregate so we don't feel that effect. But we really are.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll tell a quick story, and please cut me off, anyone. I went to Chautauqua in New York City. That place is wild if you've ever been to Chautauqua. It is like a playground for wealthy white folks to learn, and they bring speakers to speak. And I had the privilege to come speak, and it's a porch summer town, and they're like, Edwin, just be careful that if you walk around, people will ask you to come and have tea on their porch. And I was like, that's some get out stuff. But okay, I'll try it. And one group asked me, and I was drinking tea with them, and they're like, Professor Lindo, we want to tell you this story. There's a white group and said, we know you're giving this talk, but we want to know if we did the right thing. They live in the South, and they said, one day we got a phone call from this young black woman, and she said, are you the Pattersons? And they said, yeah. And she said, I think you owned my family. And they said, we didn't know what to do. We thought she would be angry because she should be. And she wasn't. She asked if she could meet us and come to the land that actually her ancestors picked cotton on, that they still own. And after building a relationship of less than 6 months, they said, we sat down and realized we cannot benefit any longer from what our ancestors did to this family. We are going to write her entire family into our will, because this land has to go back to them. And I was kind of blown away. And they didn't say it of, oh, we were proud and you should think of us as anti-racist. They said it as a matter of fact of, and we believe more people should be doing this and everyone should be doing this. And so I think, again, I mentioned that because it's part of how do we get to the place of, and it's not reconciliation per se. It is a place of sharing humanity in the devastation that existed, while knowing that the weight is heavier for a group of people who carry that oppression.
Talk about the 60s and 70s and a lot of the initial kind of groundwork that was laid for the civil rights and critical race theory. When you think about the history of like a Ruby Bridges, who, you know, had people who were picketing and, you know, standing there screaming and spitting at her saying she would go to school. You know the name of Ruby Bridges, but you don't know the names of people's parents and grandparents who were the ones who were spitting, right? But now we have in our social media and where we're at right now with technology, we have a history, we have a memory. You know, we have the recent incident that just happened out of Fred Hudge with the incident of blackface with the professor. Like, those things are digitized and remembered now. Do you think that will change the way in which generations were able to, in essence, kind of slide into the darkness and not have to teach their kids about the ugly things that they do and just back away and, you know, not have to come to terms with their racist practices? Do you think that will change and thus allow us to maybe evolve further along the path? Maybe not get to the promised land, but evolve further along that path.
That's a great question. This is my wife, by the way, and she asks great questions and thinks about these things as much, if not more, than I do. So social media is a fascinating phenomenon. You're right. It is going to expose the naked reality of the racism that people are expressing every day. How that changes history, my nihilistic approach is it just makes sure those people are going to make sure they don't get caught doing it. But it doesn't mean that they've changed their mind. So they'll just make sure there's no phones around, or they'll make sure that it only happens in closed doors. But I hope that we can try to figure out, how do we create a situation where those folks don't even think about that? And that's a pie-in-the-sky place. But I do think, and this is what we also have to hold, is that the material condition of someone facing racism outweighs that white person saying, I can't believe you recorded me on camera. But it still happened. If the camera can prevent that from happening, even if they still think their racist thoughts, that should always be the place we go, so that that person doesn't have to bear the brunt of it. They don't have to be the subject of that racism. They can have avoided it. But I think there's still going to be people that, and people say it's tribal, it's hatred, it's bigotry. And I think it is this lingering DNA that is the vestige of racism, of a point of wanting to reach an apex of power that you never actually get because it's a lie. And so white folks are sold a lie, believing they can fight for it, to have these circles of exclusivity and privilege and benefit, when I know poor folks who are shooting up around the corner, but they would still rather not be black or brown or Latino or an immigrant. And so how do we build, I go back to solidarity, how do we build the solidarity where white folks come out and say, it is now our job to be a traitor to this vestige of hatred. And I call it traitor because what happens is you have colleagues that say, or you have friends that say, oh, you're one of those now. Oh, you're anti-racist. Oh, you support Black Lives Matter. Oh, you want to study critical race theory. You're one of those. I'm sorry, what is one of those? Can you explain that to me? I'd like a little more in-depth analysis. No, you know what I mean. No, what you mean is you're not one of us anymore. And I think the goal for whiteness is to no longer be one of us, as they would put it. But that's a hard place to find and be and get to. But I think you'll feel it. You'll see it when your friends stop inviting you to the dinner table, when your friends stop inviting you over for Christmas or holidays, when your friends stop saying, yeah, our children can play together. That's the beginning, because that happens to us already. So it's trying to find that place that it pushes people enough to where if the friendship is real, you're going to pull them along to make some change. If it's not, then it's fragile. It's not actually a friendship. It's not real. You had your hand up. I'm sorry.
No. And what you're saying is true. I think in response to your last question, just my thought about that is that social media has already had a major revolutionary effect on our society. The reason I say that, when Rodney King happened how many years ago, it got people thinking, but then there was a span of time that passed where people forgot, and they got settled into the business of living and doing things. Now we have George Floyd and all of these other things, Ferguson, happening in regular intervals,
Right.
whereby people cannot look away from certain realities now. So we're forced to have these conversations that are very uncomfortable.
Yep.
People are forced to sit in their discomfort. I think that's the challenge of telling more that this country is going through right now.
Yeah.
It is through social media or technology then that's allowing us to see things that, as you say, we have all these distractions. We don't look at what's going on so people can do what they're doing. But now we're exposed to this
Right.
stuff, and it's like now we're dealing with it.
Right. And you're absolutely right. And the double-edged sword that I think we're also creeping on, and we have an expert here, is that it also has now become what I would call trauma pornography. It gets millions of views hundreds of millions of views. And I start to ask the question, why are people repeatedly watching it? And I unfortunately, I think it's because, at least from some things I've read, it's because now some people get a kick out of it. And it's disgusting to know that this harm that's being caused may actually be lighting someone up in their computer somewhere in a dark room. And so how do we carry that balance? I've stopped sharing because of the harm that I know it causes us in the household. We still talk about it. We will put things on social media describing it, but we can't bring ourselves to share the video any longer. But with George Floyd, we were in the middle of a pandemic. People were at home. They couldn't avoid it. And it was the boiling point to where folks said, and I heard people, I can't believe this is happening. And you put your hands up and you're like, where have you been existing? And it has been in the bubble of, I can exist without seeing that. And that must be an interesting life to live. Any other, I don't know how much time we have. I didn't bring my phone up. Okay. Any other, yeah.
Yeah, it's more of something you were mentioning a lot in your presentation. You were saying race is a social construct, right? How do you reconcile the idea that race is a social construct while fighting dangerous colorblind rhetoric? How do you do both at the same time?
Yeah. Great question, because it seems to be a contradiction, right? That I will come, and many folks will come and say, race is a social political construct. It's not real. And then say, but you need to see the difference in people who are of different shades of color. And you say, how do you rectify those two things? And without the nuance, I think, of CRT, it can be really hard to share where the difference lies. And the difference exists in that one talks about biology, right? And saying we are not biologically different beings, because the racist science tried to establish that. They tried to say that black people had an extra ligament in their joints. They tried to say that black people had poor lungs and therefore they couldn't give them health insurance or life insurance. They tried to say that the reason IQ levels are lower in certain communities is because they weren't European, or that on the evolutionary scale that Darwin established, Europeans were so far advanced that black and brown folks could never catch up to them. That tenet, that race is a social political construct, addresses that concern of the biology of, no, actually, there's no truth in that anywhere along the line. And where medicine is now reckoning with that truth because it has held on to it for so long, that lie for so long. The idea that we shouldn't be sitting or believing that colorblindness is the answer to our issues of racism is that if we sit in colorblindness, we never actually solve racism. Because colorblindness is the tool of dissipating the responsibility of racism and saying, oh, but I don't see color, so therefore I can't be racist because I have no color to be racist against. But really what I don't see color means is I just don't see anyone's color who doesn't look like mine. And when I do see it, it's very strange, and so I'm going to behave strangely and may call the police. But that's the differentiation that I try to make, is that one is an obfuscation of responsibility. The other one is a critique and an interrogation of a theory that somehow we are different because the shades that we have of melanin. And there's nowhere in any scientific book that actually establishes that. I hope that answers it. Okay. Any other thoughts or questions? No, well, if not, I appreciate y'all so much. Thank you for having me.